Welcome. This is Cop Talk Uncuffed with your host, Jax and Ritz. Join us as we discuss current police issues and work on building solid community relationships. We will have news, interviews, answer questions, and more. You don't have to have a badge to listen. We're here for everyone. Now, here are your hosts.
And you hit upon qualified immunity earlier.
Correct.
And there's a lot of that talk in the media these
Yes.
days. Can you explain that a little bit? What is qualified immunity?
Yes. So qualified immunity is when you sue a governmental agency, and statutorily, it's generally governed. And I'm talking, unless I specifically say federal law, I'm talking essentially states. Every state has their own laws. Ohio calls them statutes. And there's a procedural ways so you know what you're doing. So law enforcement officers know how to charge. There's a code number. It's crimes, but there's also civil statutes for divorces and things of that nature. But when you sue a government agency, generally the laws or statutes provide an immunity. And immunity means basically it's a defense or a get out of jail free card for something. Now there's qualified immunities when you're talking about government agencies. There's other immunities. A lot of people, if you watch the cop shows, they say we'll give you immunity if you testify. That means they're not bringing charges. Qualified immunity in most states, including Ohio, means that generally when you're dealing with a government agency, most people think of like police officers and their police departments and their counties. They are immune from litigation. What that means is for criminal charges for the individual police officers and the liability or civil ramifications for the department, police officer, state, or whatever entity is being sued. Why they do that, I mean, it's a legislative thing. Quite frankly, I don't agree with most of it. I think it provides a shield, which I'm sure you guys were talking about before with bad cops and the original version when we went in there to speak about law enforcement officers. I think it gives a shield for some officers that just are not good law enforcement officers. However, it basically says that you can't sue them unless you meet certain criteria, and the burden is on the moving party to say that we should be able to sue them because of this, and there's very narrow exceptions. So, a lot of people say, I want to sue the police. Well, I mean, you really have to prove that the police officers operated beyond their scope of capacity or authority, they weren't trained properly, that the department was negligent in hiring them, that they didn't properly train them, that there's not proper procedures and policies. I mean, it gets very, very hefty. Now, that being said, when you can break qualified immunity, those are the big cases. I have had several successful qualified immunity cases, including ones that didn't even get to lawsuit stage where they just settled out, even knowing that they had qualified immunity because the case was so bad, and then ones that were lawsuits were filed and then we ended up settling. I have never actually tried a qualified immunity case because generally, if you can get past summary judgment, which is a part of the lawsuit where the judge says, I'm not dismissing this case on qualified immunity, then the entities generally try to resolve it or settle it because that limits their exposure to wrongdoing.
Correct. And you said qualified immunity is more of a legislative thing that is given to government agencies.
Correct. Yeah, it's in their Ohio Revised Code, but each state has their own.
Could you explain what their reasoning for that is?
Well, I think I don't know. I mean, I don't know why legislators do half their shit that they do. So I may not be the guest that you want to ask that question to. But in my opinion, one is that government, I mean, and I'm kind of narrowing down because all of mine, I've unfortunately been with police officers doing something that really, really violated someone's rights, whether it's constitutional or statutory. At that point, I think it gives an extra protection to the government, with deference saying that we believe that all government actors are acting in good faith, and then you would really have to prove why it saves money, it saves tax dollars, it makes the higher people that make the more money, the legislators, it's kind of one of those things. And like I said, I don't necessarily agree with all of it, and I think it's way too narrow. I think we have a lot of the problems that we have in the climate today because we have qualified immunity. And, I think for the bad cops, thinking that they can hide behind a shield because, they can't, it's not coming out of their own pocket. So I don't personally agree with it. I think legislators have, their motives. I think they're operating under the assumption that all government agencies are acting within good faith, which a majority of them do, just like the police officers. But every once in a while, when you get those, rough ones in there, then you're the person who is injured or is alleging to be injured has a huge hurdle to jump.
I'm going to ask a question, and it might be out of the area here. Maybe you don't know or don't want to comment, which is fine. But if we want to start that conversation of going down qualified immunity, I recently learned that federal politicians, senators and representatives have absolute immunity.
Correct.
And do you think maybe, like, if we want to start that conversation, maybe we should look at that also?
Oh, absolutely. I think I have no problem admitting that I'm a Republican. I'm Republican. I may be a little bit socially liberal, but I register as a Republican. I'm Republican. I think we need to flush this out. I think when you're trying to hold citizens accountable and you're trying to make changes, you start from the top. You don't start from the bottom. These are people that we elect. These are people that are saying, hey, I want this job. Then they should be accountable, and they should be held to a higher standard. The original one, and I don't know if you're going to ask me the question. I don't even remember if you remember asking me the question, but you asked me, do I think police officers should have be held to a higher standard when they're not in uniform? And I said, absolutely. I think that when you're in any kind of position of authority, you always have to be portrayed in that, and you need to have people in authority, and the people are watching, and I don't know, emulating, but the people making the rules, you can't be taking payouts, and you can't be, making deals over lunch and then going and selling your constituents out because it makes you money. I think it's an awful idea. I think that you have to have the accountability, and I think it starts at the top. So it's my personal belief that they should not have immunity.
Okay. I couldn't agree anymore.
Same.
Thanks for riding with Cop Talk Uncuffed. If you like the show, please follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Also subscribe and like our videos on YouTube. Let's partner up again next time. For now, we're out of service.